And now, let me immediately invite AbdulRahman, Santiago, Ahmed, Naseem, and Jawad to please come right up and take your seats as we turn to the topic of multinational corporations in the information and communications technology sectors here in the MENA region. We're joined for this discussion by a cavalcade of regional leaders from Oracle, AbdulRahman Thehaiban, now Vice President, Middle East and Africa. Congratulations, AbdulRahman, by the way, known to many of us for his very successful run as Oracle's Managing Director in Saudi, during which his office won the 2009 Saudi Arabia Best Working Environment Award. AbdulRahman Mohammed Al-Thehaiban of Oracle. From Hewlett-Packard comes Santiago Cortes, Vice President and Managing Director of HP's Technology Solutions Group for the Middle East, Mediterranean, and Africa, a 71-nation territory. Santiago, formerly the leader for HP in Spain and Portugal. Welcome, Santiago. From Yahoo Middle East, Ahmed Nassef, Vice President and General Manager for Yahoo Middle East, formerly the Group Vice President of Maktub, acquired by Yahoo in 2009. Thanks for joining us, Ahmed. And from Microsoft, Naseem Tuffaha, Microsoft International's General Manager for the Middle East and Africa, formerly the US-based head of Microsoft's global network of independent software vendors. Naseem was based at Microsoft headquarters in the US, up in the state of Washington. Naseem now back in the Arab world to handle a bigger job, Microsoft's head for the Middle East and Africa. And our moderator, a fellow familiar to everyone in information and communications technology across the Middle East, that's Jawad Abbasi, founder and CEO of Arab Advisors Group here in Jordan, providing research and consulting on market developments and business opportunities and strategies all across the region in ICT. Let's welcome this panel and its chairman, Jawad Abbasi, ladies and gentlemen. Jawad, it's all yours. Please.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, our fellow panelists, for taking time to be in this very important panel. We are in the presence of great companies represented on the panel here. I've checked their stock prices. So the market capitalization, the combined market capitalization of the four companies is $464 billion US dollars, combined revenues of $210 billion, and combined profit, knock on wood, $33 billion US dollars. So these are indeed impressive companies with a global footprint that countries would love to have them establish offices and create value-added services to serve their local communities as well as the world at large. I'll jump right into the questions. We're going to go alphabetically. So my first question, sorry, my first question is for AbdulRahman from Oracle. From an Oracle perspective, how can the Arab world and Jordan be more hospitable to global companies setting up operations, not just sales and marketing, but more value-added services operations in the regions?
Thank you. First, to start with, the beauty of our region is to have many of the competitors at the same stage, which is you don't find this maybe elsewhere, and that's one of the good things for international companies. I think in my views, we have to look at it in two dimensions. First would be the dimension of looking at the business potential itself, doing business for the sake of potential, and that has a variety of options for many vendors. And as you might know, in the last maybe decades, there are a number of governments have established a number of initiatives to attract NHCs in order to go and do lots of development and ensure that the ICT market is already addressed. In my views, I think there is a lot of room for better growth and better investment that should take place in order to attract more international companies, NHCs in specific, and see how could that be leveraged to maximize the huge potential we have in the ICT industries. If you look at different countries, there are different initiatives has been run. In the case of Jordan, for example, His Majesty the King, when he announced and launched the RICH initiative to attract or to invest in the ICT development. In Saudi Arabia, we have the foreign investment law, when it was established to attract a number of companies, Egypt, and so on and so forth. The other dimension, I think, it would be to support that business. And that will not be subject to the business potential as such, but it would be more or less into the addressing the skill set. And there are two countries in our region that I believe has the highest potential that could be a good target for international company to invest on. No doubt Jordan and Egypt are the one, in addition to Morocco for French-speaking countries for future consideration for any potential. I think what we are missing or what could be done more to attract NHCs would be subject to the government itself. I think many of the governments in the Arab world do not put much emphasis on the capacity building initiative. And the biggest challenge many international company has in our region is the skill set. There is no doubt a shortage of the skill set. Skill set is become a showstopper for many international to grow. No doubt in the case of Oracle, for example, or any other company. I don't want to be specific on Oracle. But I think if we emphasize more on the capacity building initiative to be driven by the government, to make it as a subject of a mandate to the international company, I think it would pay back very, very positively. And I think many companies, including ourselves, would be addressing that positively. In the case of Jordan, for instance, we had a similar initiative with the government of Jordan to form a competency center because we believe the skill set of the Jordanians here, and therefore we developed the hub to serve Middle East and Africa, similarly in Egypt, and now we're doing the same in other countries. If I could maybe summarize what could be done at the end, I think it should go back to the government itself to put more emphasis on the capacity building initiative, because I think that would make a dramatic difference to attract more NHCs to the region.
Very much. Yes. A bit of housekeeping. We will allow an ongoing discussion with the panelists after the introductory questions, and of course I'll also invite the panelists to comment on each other's answers. I'll move to HP's Santiago. We talked about it a bit before the event, and your point was, let's talk about how global companies like Hewlett-Packard and its competitors can move the region from being primarily a consumer of information technology and a consumer of services to being more actively engaged in rendering these services, developing technology for itself and for the rest of the world. So could you share with us your thoughts on how this can be best done from your experience in Europe and Africa? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think, the good thing of the companies that are sitting here is we are global companies. Technology is a global challenge we all have. So we are operating in these countries because of the business and the potential of the business these countries have. But at the same time, I think in those global networks of R&D, we have also the task of developing the role of these countries to have really a position in the development of the new technologies worldwide. And I think multinational companies has that global presence, and we, in those companies, have also the challenge of making sure these countries we are responsible for have a role there. I think before coming here, I have been in this region for a bit less than a year and a half. Before I was responsible for Spain and Portugal. Spain was a developing country not too long ago, 25 years ago. It was 25 years ago. I will tell you about a story, how we worked that out in HP. HP has now in Spain about 8,000 employees. About 40% of those employees work not for Spain, work for worldwide or EMEA. And at the same time, about 150 patents are developed there for HP. And why? How did that start? Because there are around 11 centers of expertise there. Well, it started at a time at the late 80s where the US was considering to move outside of the US, the manufacturing. Before going to the Far East, went to some countries also in Europe. So one product that was large format printed, then called plotters. By the way, it was not digital, it was mainly analog and mechanical, it was pens. That it was, let's say, obsolete technology or mature technology. It was moving the assembly, and it was decided to move that to Spain. So little value added. But starting there, working there, well, added some R&D to one model, improving one model, then developing one model, then taking R&D, then getting the charter for a new group, and then transforming from analog to digital, and creating right nowadays, one of the most profitable businesses in HP, the large format printing in HP. How was that happened? And after that, while adding new competency centers. But the only thing that was key for that, it was the people. I mean, and that is the key competence we need to develop. I mean, it's having the education, the people that can do at worldwide level, competing at worldwide level. And I think when we talk about a skill shortage, the goal has not just to be how we develop the skills to cope with the challenges of our local markets. To be able to compete, we need to have the skills to compete worldwide. And then having a role to play there in our companies. So we compete with each other. I mean, to find investments into the regions. So I represent this region. I represent Jordan to fight for investments in the region within HP. And the company, I mean, just decides where they will have the best investments, return on investments, and the best people that can do that now and for the future. So the challenge we have is, I mean, with this high growth in this region, how we will bring the people, the resources, the skills, the engineers that will drive that growth, not just now, in 3-5 years. And I think that's where we can also help. We are also working in HP within the region. We just opened a competency center here. We will want to develop those skills in the region and try to compete worldwide.
Thank you very much. I'll move now to Ahmed. Not long ago, you were heading and managing an acquired company, and now you're part of the parent company. And my question, of course, is after the encouraging and successful case of Maktoub and Yahoo's acquiring Maktoub, as someone who works for Maktoub now, do you see a lot of acquisition targets in the region? And also your comments on how can the region produce more startup companies whose exit model might be to be acquired by big international companies. So just your thoughts on this issue, please.
Thanks, Jawad. Well, it's great to be here, and I'm especially honored that I finally get a chance to meet you, Jawad, because we've known each other for a long time on the phone and emails, and finally get to meet Jawad, so this is great. Yeah, I think there are a couple of tracks when we talk about potential acquisition targets, and Maktoub is a great example that a company that was acquired almost a year ago now, and Samih and Hussam are sitting over there, and they deserve a big hand for the work that they've done to bring us to this level. And I think the two models why, and I can only speak for maybe the internet, online model for potential acquisitions here. One is the potential reach and operations on the ground that a company would have. And in large part, that's also the Maktoub example. I think Yahoo was very interested in Maktoub because Maktoub had operations over a 10-year period that spanned the region, had a strong relationship with advertisers, had a great group of developers based here in Amman, had a strong management team. So all of these came together when we looked at the acquisitions that the group had made over the past 5-6 years, very smart acquisitions to consolidate reach and traffic throughout the GCC region. All of that was very interesting for Yahoo. And I think there are potentials for similar types of acquisitions. There are still challenges, and I think the challenges have to do with, a relationship of trust that a lot of regional companies have with their own consumer, with their own user. I think largely we have a challenge as Arab companies to develop kind of a sense of credibility and trust among our own users. So unfortunately, for a lot of users around the region, I think many users have a comfort level and a trust in terms of data, in terms of privacy, with a multinational company that doesn't yet exist. And I think this is where the government, public sector, and private sector can work together closely to develop that level of trust. I think the second piece that's going to be much more difficult, much more challenging, is the innovation mindset. And there's there are a lot of conversations around innovation, around entrepreneurship, but I think we're still quite a ways away. I think when we get to the level of of new ideas coming out of this region. I think the challenge is much bigger than, I think, just funding. It's about creating a whole culture of dynamic kind of innovation, of critical thinking that I think is still not quite there yet. And that needs even a bigger effort between public and private sector, between education, a commitment by, again, by governments in the region to encourage that.
Last but not least is a question to mighty Microsoft, Naseem. From the perspective of Microsoft, do you see the region ripe to establishing R&D centers, centers of excellence, support centers for global markets, or is it still in the phase of sales and marketing mainly and support for the local businesses? And if it's the latter, what can be done in the region from the perspective of Microsoft to address that issue?
I think it's a great question. Happy to be a part of this panel, and it's an exciting day for us. It's our first day in our new home, so we're very excited to be here. I think that in your opening comment, first of all, as you talk about the market capitalization, really the first thing we look at is not our market capitalization, but really the amount of economic output around what we think of as our partners and the ecosystem around Microsoft software. So in the MENA region, that's about $8 billion. And that's really how we measure ourselves, because our approach is really to invest in building capacity in a very, very broad-based way, to be a very local company who's working with local partners and investing to raise the capacity of the sector as a whole. And there are certain investments that we make, such as the innovation center that we have in Jordan and several across the region. That, we think, is important, but still not enough. And so even in your question, an R&D center and a support center are two very different things. And so when we think of an R&D center, we think of really a kind of expertise, and maybe building on this morning's discussion, the bar for differentiation is very, very high, because we need to compete on a very global scale. And the power of the software industry is that the cost of entry is actually very low. You just need a few PCs and a few smart people, and that's actually the way that most of these companies were started here. And in the world of the cloud, the cost of entry is even lower. But the barrier for success is very high, because the playing field is so level. And so to do that, it really requires some world-class expertise in some particular areas, in doing the things that will enable a country to develop that kind of expertise. And it usually comes down to, at its core, an education system that is very high quality, professors who are on top of not only the latest research, but are really inspiring students outside of the classroom, professors who are very connected to the business environment, and the number of companies that come from students, and that's really most of our heritage here. So I think countries really need to focus on the things that they're going to be expert in, and not assume that they can be all things to all people. That can take some hard decisions, because it implies not doing some things. But when doing that, that can really give the critical mass where experts are here, collaboration is taking place, and we're really pushing the edge in a very specialized and unique way. And I think that's the real opportunity. As Microsoft, one of our 5 research centers outside of the US happens to be within MENA, actually within Cairo. And so that expresses our belief that there's tremendous potential in really having this kind of elite work take place. But there's also, I think, opportunity to do more, and really want to be part of engaging with the industry, and partners, competitors, whatever we can do to help the industry develop, and really not just kind of the low cost, lower margin, outsourcing and call center type of activities, but what's really important are those high margin jobs that will allow a country to create not just jobs, but jobs with good salaries, strong opportunity for economic return that can really create the kind of ecosystem that you see in places around the world, like in Silicon Valley. Those things don't happen by accident. There's really part of a concerted strategy to get there, and really getting this alignment between industry, government, and education to come together to do that.
Thank you very much, Naseem. I'll ask the audience now to start thinking of your questions as we move into the discussion segments. I can't see because of the lights, so yeah, I'll take notes of the questions, but I'll set the tone first for a voting question that we'd like the audience to vote on. And before that, I'll go down memory lane 10 years ago as an example of how the internet changes. You have game changers that completely change the order of things. I'll give the example of Yahoo and Google, with your permission. 10 years ago, Yahoo was a household name. Everybody knew Yahoo. Very little people knew about Google. I was a technology consultant in Boston when Yahoo decided to outsource its search functions to that little-known startup called Google. And I remember the research report we wrote as technology analysts then, that the title was Yahoo Goes Gaga for Google. And because of Yahoo's dominance, Google was known, and the search became synonymous with Google. So you Google that on the internet, you don't search for it really. And that rapid change and that sudden change of business models related to search have allowed Google to outpace Yahoo. And if you allow me some numbers, Google's revenues in 2009 were 23 billion compared to 6.4 billion for Yahoo. Profit of 6.5 billion compared to 600 million of Yahoo, and capitalization of 171 billion compared to 20 billion for Yahoo. And this was 10 years ago, nobody knew that, and it rose to fame because of Yahoo's decision. So this is just an example. And
I appreciate that one. That's a really good one. I'm afraid of what's coming next.
No. But then the follow-up question to Yahoo here is, given your experience of how a small startup that you effectively enabled outpaced you, how can you guard as a company in the fast-changing technology and internet world, how can you guard against, I have an example for Microsoft later on, by the way, yeah. How can you guard against such sudden changes of fortune or sudden changes of losing sight of where the new growth potentials are? So your thoughts on that, please.
Yeah, I think, well, just kind of on Yahoo, I mean, we're the world's biggest online media company. And I can speak a lot more for what's happening in the region. And I think part of operating in the Middle East, and this is kind of the Yahoo approach, and one of the reasons that we acquired Maktoub, is you really need to have an investment in the region. You have to have an understanding of the place where you're operating. Yahoo's model is very different from some of the other companies in this space globally, in that we're all about content and communication. So it's very important to have a local presence and local knowledge. It's about the packaging and surfacing of the right combination of local content, regional content, and global content to users in the region. And it's not an easy thing to do in the Middle East, because we're looking at a region that has 22 countries in the Arabic-speaking world. Within that region, you have multiple sub-regions with different dialects. You have consumers who consume content in English, some who prefer to consume content in French, and a majority that's consuming content in Arabic, but with very little content in Arabic to get to these users. So it's a huge job for a company to tackle that one. And I think it's about really keeping up with, applying best practices, right? So that's what we're doing here in the Arabic-speaking world. Is Yahoo has been able to lead in things like email, in news delivery, and sports and entertainment content globally. So we're applying these best practices here in the Arab world. There's no reason that the Arabic-speaking world would be any different from other regions around the world, but at the same time, bringing strong talent. Some of it is here locally. Some of it from around the world. So we've brought on a few months ago to head up all our audience and content strategy, Hussam Sukkari, who was with the BBC Arabic for many years, and I think he's speaking tomorrow. Andy Abbar has joined us from Microsoft in Redmond. He left Redmond to come here, Syrian American, heading up all our product operation for the region. So it's bringing that right combination of local knowledge and best practices globally, and making sure that we're innovating and we're constantly ahead of the competition. It's also about not being afraid of competition, because I think for Yahoo in our space, only about 2% of the advertising that is spent goes to online. So it's not about really being, trying to shut other companies out, but it's actually about inviting other companies to get into this region and invest. So we're very happy to see that Google's investing more, and Facebook will be in the region soon. So I think that's all very positive for our industry. It encourages the whole pie to expand.
I'll follow up on the note of Facebook. It's also an example of a game-changing player that seeps into the scene really, and reportedly generated $900 million in revenues in 2009, and I'm sure Yahoo, Microsoft, and Google are a bit worried about where Facebook is leading things. Now, I'd like a yes or no question from all the panelists. Given how the internet enables sudden or game-changing players, do you foresee a massively disruptive player? A yes or no question, no qualifying your answers or anything. Do you foresee a massively disruptive player on the global scene coming from Jordan or the Arab world at large in the coming 5 years? Again, a yes or no question.
What about inshallah? No. Does this no?
So, AbdulRahman, yes or no?
Maybe, probably. Maybe, probably.
Santiago.
No, actually, yes, I think that would be the case.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Santiago.
I think yes.
Naseem? Okay. Now, on this note, I'd like now to put on the voting question for the audience. There is a voting device on every chair, I believe, that allows up to 3 votes. Of course, 1 vote for you and 2 for your neighbors. Don't feel free to vote 3 times your own vote. And can we put the voting question on the screen, please? You're the government, you cannot vote.
Jawad, explain only about 100 seats have the voting.
Only 100 seats have the voting devices. So I hope this explains it. So those with a voting device, you can put up to 3 votes on that voting device. And do we have the voting? Yes, the question for your votes is, I'd like the panelists to comment on the audience vote after it's done. What are the Arab world's greatest limitation in ICT? Is it our mindset? Is it money? Is it management? Or is it market or lack thereof? You've got 30 seconds to put your votes on. Now into the final countdown. No, you're just commenting on the votes. No, you don't have to vote. Okay, I'd like some drum roll, please, and let's get the results out. Okay, our dear panelists, your thoughts on the results of the vote. AbdulRahman.
I would disagree. I don't think it's a matter of a mindset. I think it's purely the showstopper, as I indicated earlier.
Put the results on, please.
Yeah, as indicated earlier, I think that the biggest showstopper is the skill set. So if you look at it from the 4 points listed, I would say management is an issue. Management would be managing the organization, would be managing a project. But the mindset, I would disagree. Definitely not the money, not the market. Because the market, I believe, is known to everybody. We have green field of opportunity. Highly uninvested market due to big time difference and the big actually time zone difference. That's what I call it compared to the West. I think there's a lot of room for innovation, a lot of room for creativity, a lot of room for investment. So I would go for number 3 actually, and not 1 for sure.
So you agree with the 5th of the audience?
Yeah.
Excellent. Santiago.
Well, I really think that mindset, I mean, we are talking about the big successes. I mean, Google. One thing on the mindset is everybody wants to have a Google. And by the way, short term. I mean, this is a long-term run. And that's the mindset for me. In this world where there is money, where I think there is potential skills, I mean, there are talent to grow. But, I mean, this is long run. It's long term. By the way, it is not a quick win that we all want to have, you know, within a year, you know, a Google in Middle East. So I think if we think like that, it's an investment, long-term investment, and it's talent, and things about talent and developing talent takes time. It is not on a year. So I think maybe that's right.
Ahmed?
Yeah, I'll go the safe way and agree with the audience. I think it is a mindset issue, no question about it. I mean, when you look at other sectors, market, management, money, it's all there, right? It works in the real estate market, it works in financial services. There are great successes around the region. It's the barriers are not these other items. It is when it comes to ICT, when it comes to internet, to digital, it's all about a mindset of innovative thinking, of critical thinking, that unfortunately, frankly, is not quite encouraged yet in our region at the educational level, and it gets to the root, it gets to the heart of our educational systems. I mean, His Majesty talks about the youth population in this region. I mean, Jordan is a good example, but it's throughout the world, throughout the whole Arab world, right? We have the youngest population in the world. So it's about that mindset of the youth population and encouraging critical thinking, questioning. From there, you get innovation. And that's not the culture that we've had.
I'd also like to comment on mindset because it really manifests itself in so many ways. One, for example, attitudes towards risk. I mean, this is fundamentally a risky proposition. And you have to be prepared to fail and almost celebrate failure and the learning that comes with that. That's really a lot of the culture around the industries that have been very successful. So rather than going for the safe job or working for the safe company on the safe project, you know, with many students who I meet who have amazing talent, often feel that their aspiration is too low and not high enough in terms of their ability, even as students, to go and start companies, and really trying to encourage that. If you look at the example of Facebook, of course started by a student, he had many opportunities to sell out. Sell at, you know, we say their rumored valuation is over $20 billion. There would have been many opportunities to sell out at 10 million, 100 million, a billion, and they declined because their ambition and their aspiration was extremely high. That's about mindset. And I think another important aspect around mindset is really around collaboration and teaming up and connecting, rather than doing your own thing and protecting your idea and having your little entity and being the head of that entity, really connecting up and instead of covering ideas, sharing them and building on top of other ideas. And even this movement between companies, while, you know, it might be a loss for Microsoft to lose Andy Arbad, it's something that's good for the region. And when you find in places like Silicon Valley, people are getting lots of experiences by moving through lots of different companies and connecting around very new and important ideas. So I think, you know, willingness to take risk, promote it and celebrate it, the ability to connect and collaborate and really work as teams, these are some of the key ingredients. We don't really teach these things in our schools, but ultimately these are some of the real differentiators that you see and how these markets can develop in terms of the things that really will be of the high magnitude. When we bring up names into your early question, will there be a company, you know, along the lines of the ones that you mentioned, whether from Jordan or from the Gulf or Egypt or so on? This shift in mindset might make more of a difference than people expect.
Thank you very much. Now let's light up the room, please, and engage the audience in questions and answer sessions with the panelists. Lights, please. And for every question, please introduce yourself and your company and a copy of your passport.
My name is Kareem Darwish. I'm from the Microsoft Research Center in Cairo. And I've heard the issue of skill set, talent set, skilled workers mentioned by many of the panelists here. And I completely agree. I mean, we have our own problems of hiring highly skilled people. You have to interview so many people to just hire just one person. I guess my question would be, can you guys actually make a set of the things that you would like to see from the government? Say, we want this number of computer science graduates who have this skill sets and they can pass this kind of exam, or they have this kind of ability, this number of PhDs, and so on and so forth. So it's just I mean, we can keep whining about, how bad, the skill market is and so forth, but, can we put a plan to actually say, we need this many people, how can we grow to scale, and so forth? Thank you very much.
Please, AbdulRahman.
I think it takes two to tango. And hence, it's something related, as you mentioned earlier, it's the government as well as the vendors. From actually our perspective, I share the experience of Oracle. We've been working with a number of governments. We've been trying to drive the capacity building initiative in order to develop a certain skill set, because we believe the lack of the shared skill set, not necessarily for our own domain, but also for the utilization of the product, either Oracle or non-Oracle. I'm not being specific on Oracle, because I believe that's a common interest for everybody. The more investment, for example, regardless of the competition Oracle has, for example, with Microsoft, for instance. Whatever initiative that runs or developed by Microsoft would eventually have a very, very positive impact on Oracle, and vice versa. I think we are doing a number of initiatives, and there are many doing a number of initiatives, but I think we need to do more of engagement with the educational institution itself. There is a lag, there is a gap between what the universities and the Arab world provide in terms of graduates to what the market needs. And I think that gap can only be fulfilled if there is more emphasis of an advisory board, or there is an engagement from the international vendors to be part of defining the future potentials of graduates that would have an impact on our own business and eventually the customer. That's, I think, what should be taken in order to move on that.
Thank you very much. We have a question from gentleman on the top. Yes.
Farhan Kalal, the Queen Rania Center for Entrepreneurship. The discussion in the last 20 minutes, 30 minutes was about one important dimension, which is education. But what about the other dimension, which is startups and entrepreneurship? As we know, the more entrepreneurs we have, the more startups, the more companies, the more SMEs, the larger the economy, and the more IT spending. So what, for example, Oracle or HP is doing in this regard, or Yahoo?
Well, let HP answer that. Okay.
I think it's very much related to the education issue, right? It's like you can't have one without the other, right? When you look at the innovation ecosystems in the US, in Silicon Valley or Silicon Alley, and the relationships between how a lot of these companies, like the Googles and the Yahoos, came out, from Stanford, and the type of thinking, right? It's an ecosystem where venture capital, where angel funding, where universities really kind of create this, and it's not here yet. Now, it used to be where we all complained we don't have any money funding, right? Now there's money, right? Now there's interest coming in from multinationals, from local companies, from traditional media. Everybody wants to get into this space, but I think that's where we need to now close the loop, right? Education is really an integral part of that innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem.
Naseem and then Santiago.
Sure, I think it is, and maybe to start, agreeing with your point, even if you look at that Facebook example, a student left Harvard and then felt the need to move to Silicon Valley to go and set up and really, try to do it right, because there was an expectation. The question is, how do we build a similar environment in countries in this region where it's actually a destination, where if you want to build a company, this is a place to go because the resources are there. From the standpoint of Microsoft in particular, for us, it's about continuing the investments in education and really trying to enhance the quality. It's about inspiring students to do things outside of the classroom. Okay, this is just not about textbook learning anymore, but really at a young age to get involved with projects. We had a tech competition, 30,000 students across Middle East and Africa competed last year. 40 teams from within Jordan. And this is bringing a new approach towards entrepreneurship. And then we're willing to invest. So we have a program, it's called BizSpark, and for companies that want access to the software tools that they need, we make it available to them for free for a 3-year period. And that's an investment. We've had 60 companies do that within Jordan and hundreds across the MENA region over the past 18 months since we launched it. So it's important to take that long-term approach. I think multinationals have a responsibility, and I think we're all acting on that responsibility to invest. And then, reaping that investment is something that we need to be patient with and hope to support and develop over the long term. In addition to that, the last thing is really trying to connect people with the skills that they might be missing and really provide more of that network and that kind of team support that will help give them the boost they need to propel forward.
Thank you. We have a question from Her Royal Highness, please.
I'd just like to say, with response to your comment about the need for innovation ecosystems, I'm proud to say that we've had 2 speakers who are part of Jordan's first innovation ecosystem and Jordan's first science city. So the Queen Rania Center represents our entrepreneurship center. The Sumaya University represents the students, which is our talent input into that. And Microsoft are actually represented there as well. So I don't think we're so far behind. I think that we sometimes don't look upon the fact that in countries such as Jordan, we've already been able to leapfrog the process, and our success stories have told us that. So I would urge the big companies as well to really look, when you're looking to invest, to see where the innovation ecosystems already do exist, and I'm glad that Jordan has already taken the lead in this.
Thank you, Your Highness. Question from Mr. Ahmed.
My name is Ahmed Malhas. I'm the CEO of Iris Guard. I have a question from the standpoint of a graduate today. You are insurmountable, of course. I mean, the big names, it's very far. The distance, I've seen it over decades that I've worked. The distance between us here and the big companies and the billions you just mentioned are becoming insurmountable. I must hammer at the investments issue again and incubation. I would like to hear what roles the big companies that 90% of graduates aspire to work for any of you for. It's not as easy as Facebook guy leaving Harvard, going to Stanford. This is not going to happen here in Jordan. I'd like to hear how we can translate this in giving opportunities on a business perspective, on things like Oasis 500, on funds that go on the macro level, Medan, all these things. I mean, it's nice to support education, which is good, which is everyone is doing, and much thanks to all the big companies. But truly, innovation needs to be incubated, and especially early seed money and things like this. And your experience and your names will give people in this region a way to try to go to other big places and make it, an answer to your question whether something is going to happen in 5 years. It's not going to happen unless we actually support it and nourish it at the early stages in investments. So I'd like to hear just a little bit on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmed. Let's hear HP's comments on that. Santiago.
The first thing I could say is, because we say about innovation in the region, there are hundreds and thousands of professionals of these regions working across the globe. I mean, and in the US. I mean, it's how we get all those people getting also working an ecosystem in the countries in the Middle East and in Jordan. I have found great Jordan professionals across the globe. I mean, how we can get that here? I mean, it is having the graduates, but having the environment that creates the innovation. I also have found innovation here. But how we structure that innovation in a way that is also medium and long term, not just for the quick win, trying to get a company and sell it to one of the multinationals, you know, in a couple of years. I mean, I think that's the challenge we have. I think I have found the governments in the region and the Jordan government being very proactive, supporting this, but I mean, it's just creating the elements around. I think we have the responsibilities, and at the end, the society and has a responsibility to develop that mindset in the youth that goes for risk and for investment in education and thinking global and not just local.
Take one final question from the gentleman on the top there.
Are we with King Abdullah, University of Science and Technology, Khost in Saudi Arabia. We're just in our first year, but we have partnered with 25 companies and have had them come in and tell us everything they would like to see. And I'm wondering how Yahoo and Microsoft, well, if you are working with any companies in the universities in the region, and how those relationships are developing and how they're different from your relationships in other areas.
So we have a broad set of relationships with universities within the region for some of the programs that I was speaking to. Let me give an example of what we'd like to do in the region, which isn't currently available. And it's a concept of what we call external research. So we have a team of researchers who are, in many ways leading experts in their particular areas. And then we do very specific partnerships with universities to promote collaboration in advancement of that research, that kind of core original research. So with Georgia Tech University, it's around robotics. With Brown University, it's around pen computing. University of Washington, distance learning. I mean, very leading edge and specialized things. And that's a way to really connect the top researchers in the world to support really the objectives of growing, the frontier even further. And so I think there are real opportunities. We've done now some of these partnerships in Asia and a few in Europe, and we'd love to do more of these kinds of partnerships within the Middle East. So it's an opportunity, I think, for us to take the kind of support that we've been doing today around teacher training, curriculum development, a lot of the fundamentals that are very important for capacity building, but then really take that level of, let's call it pure research collaboration to a whole different opportunity. And I think, again, when you look at things that are happening in places around the world like Stanford, that tends to lead to, the number of companies on this panel from Yahoo, HP, and so on, coming out of some core universities. It would be great to have that kind of replicated, because it can connect to ultimately creating very innovative companies in the long term as well.
I'm afraid we are out of time. We'd like to be shorter than the allocated time than overtime. It's always better to be to tell the organizers that we concluded within our time slot. You don't have to talk to us about anything about it. So. Allow me to please to thank all the panelists for their time. Thank you for your attendance, and we look forward to a very successful 2 days of this MENA ICT forum. Thank you very much.